This council meeting will be webcast, and I remind all those present that their words and actions will be broadcast to a wider audience, and certain conduct is unacceptable and it will not be tolerated. Should any person not wish to be recorded, I advise they should leave the meeting room prior to making any statements. Any defamatory statements made are not the position of council and remain an individual's opinion. Council accepts no responsibility for any defamatory statements, and all liability remains with the person making remarks. I now call on Councillor Sutherland to do an acknowledgement of the country. Please, Councillor Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to say Yama Re Gomoroi, Wallabaganyani, Galwa, Lambo Mari, Mara, Ngale Down, Dilia Yanbali, Karamaris Kaingal Gomoroi Yamlanginda, Winalanginda, Winangalawa. And that's the language spoken by our families and our communities here in Tamworth, making sure that we acknowledge the country that we're on, which always was and always will be the land of Gomeroi people, and making sure we pay respects to our elders who have cared and still care for this country. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Sutherland. And I might ask all those that wish to stand and ask Scott Dunlop to deliver the council prayer, please. Pastor Scott Dunlop.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Evening, everybody. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you as the Lord of heaven and earth and the sustainer of all things. We thank you for the prosperity and stability that you've given to Tamworth and for the great community and freedom that we enjoy. Please continue to have your hand upon us. We pray that our community leaders will continue to build and strengthen our community, especially the councillors and staff of Tamworth Regional Council. Please give the new council great wisdom and unity, that every decision would be full of integrity and equity for the advancement of our region and community. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Councillors, I'll now declare the meeting open and ask apologies and leaves of absence. We have all here tonight bar one councillor, and he is on, is it Teams or Zoom? Or?
Teams.
Teams. So he's also participating in the meeting. Item 2 on the agenda is community consultation. We have 3 speakers tonight. Councillors, I'll call on Mr Peter Gill to speak on item 6.1.
I've actually put it in as 6.1 and 6.2.
6.2 and 1, okay.
Mayor, councillors, staff and visitors, I speak in support of the motion. The grammar errors in the last 2 paragraphs of item 6.1 are noted. Both of these items reflect on transparency and accountability. The lack of information is misinformation. Human nature is very adept at filling in the gaps. The old adage, if you haven't heard a rumour by 9 AM, start one. I have, no doubt along with many other interested people, reviewed the 57 documents made available on the TRC website. These contain a huge amount of information, and like many others who are unpaid verifiers, I struggle with the necessary time input into the task. My analysis points to, in addition to arguable redactions, gaps in the logical flow of information leading up to the award of a contract or investigation, stroke demolition, as a commencement phase of the Walsh House remediation. In particular, the tender documentation is publicly available at the time of tender in order that prospective bidders can evaluate the opportunity. Further to this, it is usual for there to be considerable discussion about the scope of work, which is the basis of the price to perform said work. It would be expected that there should be a trail between the owner, TRC, and the client's representative, PWD, who it appears were responsible for framing the tender documents and later project management on behalf of TRC. Once a tender has been awarded, during the execution phase, any changes, variations to the contract as awarded should be documented. In the 57 documents provided on the TRC website, I have not been able to find such information. The point I make is that not all of the information appears to have been provided. For avoidance of misinformation, is the Queen's opening clerk still in place, as there are conflicting reports? Transparency was a theme of many councillors elected and present here tonight. Could the public please see this in action? Thank you for the opportunity to present. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Gill. Councillors, we now have a second speaker tonight, Mrs. Suzanne Hanson, speaking on 6.2.
My name is Suzanne Hanson. I will be speaking in regard to 6.2 Ray Walsh House. The subject of this motion was originally discussed and resolved in the council meeting on May 28. Many concerned community members were present and were left unsure of the outcome for Ray Walsh House. The words "to not remediate Ray Walsh House for the purpose of reoccupation by council staff and council operations" and an options paper for the future disposal of Ray Walsh House were cause for concern. An amendment to the original motion was proposed by Councillor Rodder, which asked for more time for community consultation before a decision was made and quotes for remediation possible grants from state and Commonwealth governments. This was discussed at length before being defeated 2-7. Another amendment by Councillor Southwell, which related to improving accommodation for staff in the medium to long term, was also defeated 3-6. It was not always evident what was actually being voted on at any given time. Reading the minutes of that May meeting did not include any discussion points, questions from councillors or clarification given as part of the decision made. No extra points were recorded. Councillor Mears has pointed out in the motion tonight that point 1 and 3 in the May 28 motion may have led to concerns by community members as disposal of Ray Walsh House was the only option put forward. The motion tonight attempts to clear this up and allow for other options to be considered. Recent workshops have been held to inform new elected councillors about the options for Ray Walsh House. I will be interested to hear their views before the motion is resolved.
Thank you. We have a third speaker tonight, Mr. Ben Hopkins on item 7.3.
Yes, I'll be addressing the council tonight on item 7.3 of the agenda, which is a council request to the Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure to expedite an amendment to the local environmental plan to transition the LEP mapping to the New South Wales Planning Portal Digital Environment Planning Instruments, or EPI viewer. I'd like to request that the councils, however they've been briefed on this, consider whether this is a sensible thing to do. There are existing processes for the comprehensive review of the LEP. Phase 1 was passed in this building in August with a 9-0 vote. 130-page report was produced and the councillors got to see all of the planning proposals. It was finalised and then sent to Sydney, and then that became the law. And once this law has been made, then these PDF maps can be produced in accordance with the law. We're talking about the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act, and this is the most important planning and environmental instrument in Tamworth. Now, there's a complicated recommendation in here which basically says that for the council, it's a time-consuming process to change a lot of these individual PDF maps. But what I think is buried in the subtext here is a plan to allow changes to the LEP to happen between council officials and members of the Department of Planning, Infrastructure and Housing, negotiated behind the scenes, and not wait for the second phase of the LEP to be completed, not wait for this to become official law, and therefore to begin making these maps before the existing gateway process has been finished. I'd like the councillors to consider how important their role is as an oversight, that they get to see a finished report of the planning proposal, they get to finalise that. The community has time to make submissions during public exhibition, and this irons out so many problems in the planning proposal, in the planning process, which could get missed if this is done in a digital transition, which happens between council officials and the department for these LEPs, especially this second phase. I'd like to point out there's a lot of changes planned as a result of the regional housing strategy. And I suspect that one of the reasons to expedite this amendment is that some of these changes could go through in a way which wasn't considered necessary for the first phase, which considered conservation of heritage and some sensible things. I think the same care and attention should be given by all of the elected councillors to phase 2, and that I would like to encourage them to reject item 7.3 and demand that the councillors see a finished planning proposal and not to go to a digital transition for the LEP mapping. Thank you.
Councillors, that's the conclusion of community consultation. We'll now move to item 3 on the agenda, minutes from the previous meeting. Could I have somebody move their true and correct record? Thanks, Councillor Ryan. Seconded, Councillor Impey. Any questions, councillors? Any comments? I'll put those as true and correct record. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, we move from there to item 4, disclosure of interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 7.3 in relation to the Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure, which is the department I work for. However, as this is a motion related to the planning cluster of that department, I will remain in the chamber and participate in discussion and just declaring a less than significant non-pecuniary interest.
Thanks, Councillor Rodder. Any further?
Yep.
Councillor.
Mr Mayor, with regard to item 2, planning and proposal, secondary dwellings in certain rural lands, I'd just like to declare, and I think I have pecuniary interest. I have a secondary dwelling that's been decommissioned. It could quite easily be recommissioned on RU4 land. So I think it is a reasonable benefit, a personal benefit if I'm not careful. I probably wish to excuse myself from the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Moore. Any further disclosures? There being no further disclosures, I'll move on to item 5, Mayoral Minute. There is no Mayoral Minute tonight, so we'll move straight to item 6.1, and we have a notice of motion from Councillor Mark Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. As
Wish to move that?
yes, Mr Mayor, thank you.
And do we have a seconder? Councillor Mears. No.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just so we've seen that the... so I want to state from the outset that the Speaker in community consultation, Mr Gill, mentioned the grammatical words. I was not responsible for that bit about the clause 3.13 at the end of my motion. But moving on, in relation to... just to have some questions first. So we got the responses from the General Manager. And I absolutely agree, while staff's personal medical information is private, this does not preclude Council from identifying the number of Council staff who have undergone scans or testing. And therefore, I was asking really how many staff members have been scanned or tested.
Councillor Rodder.
Does that need to be taken on notice?
It probably will have to be. Because there's so many different types of checks, health checks that we do, I think that'd be a difficult one to answer off the board.
And the second question was in response to question number 3, stating that Council has commenced health monitoring by health professionals to identify changes in employees' health status because of exposure to certain hazards in the workplace. My question was, A, what is the specific date these health professionals were first engaged to specifically monitor staff for asbestos-related injury or disease? And B, what constitutes certain hazards did council specifically ask or instruct these health professionals to monitor staff for any asbestos-related injuries or diseases? Was the word asbestos specifically mentioned in any communications, directions or appointments involving these health professionals, and on what specific date were these words first communicated to these health professionals? And finally, question 6, in relation to the contractor utilised to demolish and or remove asbestos rise constructions, why were they chosen to do these works? And B, was more of I undertook a licence search of this company, and I actually found that they did not have licences to demolish or licence for asbestos removal. Unless there was another Rice Constructions, but it's the Armadale company, and they're both their licences for demolition and and asbestos removal expired.
Councillor Roy, I don't believe they were engaged to do asbestos removal, but the General Manager might.
So I can leave that.
Mr Mayor, the first two, Councillor Rodder, I'll take on notice because there's a whole new approach to the management of workplace health substances. So everything from, it largely arose from the man-made stone, so from cutting man-made stone. So we've had hygienists come in, examine every workplace in relation to all of the hazardous materials, so that does include asbestos. I will provide you with more information around that. The tender process, we will have to take that on notice as well, because that tender process was actually run by Public Works. So they did the assessment of the tenders, they did the recommendation for the appointment that came to council to award that tender. So we would have to pose that question again.
Okay.
Does that answer your questions? Councillor, you got further questions?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, councillors, do we accept Councillor Rodder's notice of motion and the responses we have there, with someone has responses being on notice?
Mr Mayor, the way to handle a question with notice is a receive and note motion based on the questions that are posed and the answers that are provided to date. Obviously, with the follow-up information that we provided, so it's a motion to receive and note.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. That makes it fairly clear. Can I have a motion to receive and note? Councillor.
Yes, I'm happy to receive and note.
Seconded, Councillor Mears. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, will now move on to the second notice of motion, 6.2, moved by Councillor Mears. Councillor Mears, you want to move that? Do you want to have a seconder? Councillor Roller. Councillor Mears, you have to speak to that?
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Through you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for allowing me to get up and speak on this. It's obviously my motion. As we've discussed over the last few weeks, there's been a lot of confusion or misinformation, I believe, being levelled at people that were saying that the building may or may not be for sale. So part of that was, and we've discussed that motion, it was very devoid of the original motion of alternates other than for the disposal and never moving back in. So I thought, being that we're running a committee, so that we can get all the information available, and I know Mr Bennett's been working on some other stuff in the background, so it'd be great to come to the table. And it was just putting this motion in to make it quite clear to the residents that they find the decision hasn't been made to dispose of, and then allow that information to be brought to council, given that the motion previously, we were only to see an options paper for the future disposal. So I think by changing that motion to all options would certainly give the residents and other councils confidence that we'll move forward with more than just a disposal option.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments on that recommendation, on that motion? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Certainly I commend the motion of by Councillor Mears. As a councillor that campaigned strongly on retaining Ray Walsh House and taking another look at remediating the site, I can say confidently that the view was likely to be shared by a majority of the people that elected me and other electors who also voted for candidates such as Councillor Mears and Councillor Sharpen. If you want the results of a survey or genuine community consultation, then consider those many votes that some of those candidates received that campaigned on the issue of Ray Walsh House received. That's genuine consultation and a massive shot in the arm for Ray Walsh House. From my perspective, nothing would demonstrate more emphatically the will of the people about Ray Walsh House than the recent local government elections. The people of TRC want us to honestly explore all options, and that means asbestos-containing vermiculite removal, remediation and renovation. What they don't want is for the building to be cheaply privatised to a developer. We have seen the history of other valuable public assets sold cheaply in this region, the VGuy cable building as an example, which was actually condemned, claimed to have had a myriad of flaws, including concrete cancer, but voila, sold cheaply, and I believe making a handsome return for the owner. Any other proposed option on the table, such as a multi-use performing arts and council building, is grossly unfunded and unlikely to be funded, even if governments change in the next federal or state elections. Because largely, I believe our region is irrelevant, and so what we need to do is look at what we have and look outside the square and look at how we can actually purpose that building and get back in there. Councillors, we can say we were right in our decision of the 28th of May this year, and the people were wrong, but nothing says, I believe, out of touch elite like the people voting for one thing and their elected leaders giving them something else. So I 100% support Councillor Mears' motion. The people of our region are insisting on this course of action, and anything else, I believe, is a betrayal of the people of our region.
Councillors, any comments on that motion? Councillor Walsh.
I do commend Councillor Mears for bringing this motion to council and particularly trying to bring some clarity to the situation, which I think is good. Openness and transparency, we all want that. I just like to a few little tidy ups if I could, a few insertions if I could make some amendments. Ask for that. In part 2 there, continue to investigate options to improve accommodation for staff over the medium term of up to 10 years. There we're saying set 10 years. As long as there's some clarity because I don't want to commit to 10 years of staff. That's almost saying that we're not going back. We should be able to remediate and fix that building if we choose to do so in a quicker time period than that.
Councillor Mears, you've put that notice of motion forward. Would you accept that you insert the word up?
You're more than happy for that, Mr Mayor.
And would the seconder accept that? Thank you.
Part 5. The workshops relating to Ray Walsh House extend invitation to industry professionals with expertise in remediation, then renovation. I'd like to insert in there building code advisors. Everything we've got there is all about remediation fixing. I would like to see some of the timeline of when some of the decisions are made in amongst all of that.
Building code
advisors.
Again, Councillor Mears, would you accept those?
I'm happy with that also, Mr Mayor. Yes, I am.
Would the seconder accept that?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
So what's that going to say now?
The workshops related to Ray Walsh House extend invitation to industry professionals with expertise in remediation, building code advisors, renovation and replacement or remediation of all plant and equipment as required. So building code advisors after remediation.
Or building code advice.
Advice? I want experts.
The advisors to
have
give that advice.
I want advisors, I don't want just advice.
The word advisor doesn't make grammatical sense, but it doesn't matter. in the context.
Councillor,
I'm open to change, but I'm just looking for an advisor or not advice.
direct all questions through the mayor. So we've got those two amendments made, well, they're amendments to the printed motion, so Councillor Mears as the mover and Councillor Rodwell as the seconder have approved that. Any further comments, Councillor Moore?
No, thank you. No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wishing to speak or make further comments on that?
Quick one. Yeah, it was definitely clear during the election, Mr Mayor, that certainly the people that voted for me were very keen to see Ray Walsh House back up and running. Obviously, it comes at the safety of the staff is very important, but also at an economical cost as well, remediation as well. So I very much commend Councillor Mears for bringing this forward.
Thank you. Further comments, Councillor?
Yes, Mr Mayor, look, I think it's a topic we should be discussing, both strategically but also transparently. And as a new councillor, I look forward to personally finding out a lot more about Ray Walsh House, where it is, where it might be in the future, because at the end of the day, the 9 councillors who are here in the room are here to work with the council as an organisation, with the stakeholders who work on reports and so forth, professionals, to ensure that whatever does happen, and I don't think anyone really knows, otherwise it would have been fixed a long time ago, that we will make the decision that's both in the best interest of the community, but also socially and financially in the best interest of the community. And we can't discount anything that will appear in future reports, in future workshops that we will be part of, to ensure that the decisions made are the most appropriate decisions for everybody involved.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? Councillor.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think these are sensible changes that build upon the resolution reached by the previous council. As Councillor Mears points out in his supporting information, we need to show residents that as a council we are making an attempt to review all options regarding the future of Ray Walsh House. But I think it's also incumbent on us to take residents along with us for this decision-making process, regardless of whatever we ultimately decide. Point 4 in the resolution, passed on the 28th of May, and this new amended motion, make it the responsibility of council to undertake community consultation in conjunction with consideration of options. But we're missing an important link in that consultation chain if not all options are on the table for consideration to begin with. And I think this new motion addresses that oversight, and I commend Councillor Mears for raising it.
Thank you. Any further comments, councillors?
Yep. Again, I'd commend Councillor Mears in putting forward a notice of motion with the changes. Just a question to the General Manager, or through you, Mr Mayor, and that is that in the process of reviewing all options and providing the report back with the options paper, what kind of resources is that looking at in additional to what was voted on earlier?
Through you, Mr Mayor, Councillor Sutherland, that's a good question. We're actually working through internally exactly which experts need to be brought to the table. Obviously, the first part of the briefing to councillors will be a workshop both with Public Works and also the enviroscience people who did the contamination reports, the 2 contamination reports. That's to clearly explain as a base point how all the different decisions were made. We'll also take councillors through the process where we had the external probity audit done around that decision-making process that demonstrated that they were all made with the appropriate authority and due process, and the information presented to council was appropriate. Following that, that's when we'll start to explore the options, and that's where we'll start to bring in other building experts. We had McMahon Services come and speak to council very early on after we evacuated the building. They're probably the preeminent asbestos removal company in Australia, based out of Newcastle. We'll have them brief the councillors around the approach to removing vermiculite, what they've done in other buildings right around Australia. This is both privately owned buildings and government owned buildings. A lot of hospitals and schools were built in similar ways around the same time, so they've been involved in a lot of projects. I think it's important for the council to understand from their perspective exactly what the process is. As Councillor North pointed out, we will make sure the councillors understand what the requirements are around major renovation of buildings, and why you can't just essentially say it's got an existing use, and if you do a major renovation, which is obviously what we're doing when we're going to strip it back essentially to to steel and concrete, you have to then fix the building code issues. So we'll get an expert to come and explain that to the councillors, and then we'll start to develop all the options, everything from a full re-kit for council to reoccupy, a re-kit for us to be used by something else owned by council, a sale of it to be redeveloped by somebody else, or even a demolition of the building. All of those options will be explored.
And a follow-on question, Mr Mayor, whereabouts will that resourcing come from a budgetary point of view?
So the biggest part of the resource council will actually have to pay these experts to come and address the council. So we'll put a report to council following the first briefing, talking about the costs associated with presenting that information to council and get a budget allocation to do that.
That's the general fund?
Correct.
Mr Mayor, thanks for the information from the General Manager. I'm in support of the recommendation, but noting that, the additional cost, of looking at all options is a cost that the community is looking forward us as council to make. I believe that cost will end up raking up a fair bit of community funds to be able to make sure we get the appropriate experts and spend enough time in, and that cost is coming at the expense of community. And so that's a decision I think is the right one to make sure we get the best outcome in this space. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thanks, councillor Tuttle. Any further comments, councillors? Before I put the recommendation? I'll put the recommendation. All in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried.
Mr Mayor, could we record division?
Well, everybody supported it, so it's unanimous.
So that's fine.
No division, because no.
You can call a division, but it's unanimous. Yeah.
Did we see Jeff's? Yeah, good. Good, just check.
Councillors, we'll now move to item 6.3, notice of motion to Ryan Brook. If you'd like.
Yep. Oh, sorry,
Stand up.
Yep.
And we've got a second for councillor there, councillor Impey.
I'd like to speak up. Yep. In our communication strategy, one of our stated principles as an organisation is to be open and transparent. I quote, "Our messages are communicated with integrity to ensure the community sees us as a source of truth. We seek to build trust between the community and council by communicating authentically and honestly. If this is one of our stated values, I think implementing this change is low-hanging fruit that can easily be implemented to help build trust between the community and council. We already do this for DA decisions. It's a simple procedural change, so let's do this for all votes in the council chamber. In return, residents will be able to simply look at council meeting minutes to transparently review how their elected representatives have voted. Or they can go back and look at previous council meeting minutes to view our voting record and hold us accountable to our decisions. This is a simple change and a knock-on effect for community confidence in the openness of the council more than justifies making it, in my opinion."
Speak against, anyone wish to make comment?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I definitely support this motion by Councillor Brook. Many councils throughout New South Wales and Australia already record divisions of votes, which is good, as we just did then, even though it was unanimous. So sometimes, as with our business, it just flies through and there's no objections or opposition to motions. So, it's just ticking the unanimous box. But sometimes it is, it can be a division, which actually is important, I think, to the residents in terms of enhancing transparency of council decisions, and I supported it.
Further comments, councillors? No further comments? Councillor Williams?
No, right.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you. Yeah, I'd just like to commend the motion. I think it's a great opportunity to make all council meetings open and transparent. And although it is online and you can go through it and watch all the hands get put up, it's a lot easier if you can just read the following minutes. So I think it'll show, as we've discussed previously, that the majority of decisions made by the previous council and probably the council before that are nearly always done in quite amicably, and generally speaking, unless it's a contentious motion, that they're usually supported unanimously anyway. So just to have that recorded, other than just resolved, gives the residents the opportunity to just look at how we're voting on different issues.
Further comments, councillors? Councillors, it's a very simple act, and I think it's a very good thing to do as a council. It certainly demonstrates to people's voting records, so thank you. So, any further comments? No, I'll put the recommendation. Those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We'll move from there on to item 6.4.
Move, Mr Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Mears. You speak to that?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just, so, look, this came about when we were obviously discussing, committees of council generally, and I just thought, given the investment, the significant investment by the residents of our local government area in the Global Gateway Park, I thought it actually was it would be a good idea to have a committee of that estate, including councillors. I mean, I haven't considered the terms of reference or anything like that, those sorts of questions. Obviously, they can be ironed out a bit later, but I did think that it would be a good idea to have a committee of council, including councillors, staff, and obviously the representatives of the real estate agents. But despite concerns about this being operational in nature, there are a number of committees that consider council matters of an operational nature, I believe including the Traffic Safety Committee or the Urban Street Tree Committee. As I have mentioned in supporting information, I have raised this notice of motion because the people of our region have invested millions of dollars into developing this site. I believe it is appropriate to have elected representatives at the table, ensuring that we are fully aware of the progress of this valuable estate. When I recently inspected the site, it was overgrown with numerous weeds scattered around basically the entrances of Goddard Lane, and I noticed that there will be an entrance. There is an entrance off Oxley Highway as well. And coincidentally, and to my pleasure, a few days later, someone thought that thought what I was thinking and slashed the area. But generally, I felt it was hardly presented nicely for sale to prospective purchasers. Councillors have been requested to approve significant ratepayers' funds on development of the TGP, industrial estate and the construction of infrastructure. Councillors should be privy to final negotiated written contract offers of sale of land just before they are executed. Ratepayers need to have confidence that they have representatives at the table providing oversight of this process and to make sure all sales and cost objectives are being met in real time before the event and not after it. Councillors are asked to approve leases as lessor and lessee. Why are we not permitted the same granular detail when it comes to the sale of ratepayer-owned land, which sometimes can involve transactional amounts well in excess of any leases we are asked to approve? And so I therefore commend the motion, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, anyone wish to speak against that recommendation?
Move an amendment to it.
Yes.
Can I ask a question first, because it may influence you?
Sure.
What you were saying. Sorry, Mr Mayor. Just a question, is there any advisory groups or working groups involved that oversee that councils could sit in on and observe that would do the job as anyway?
There is an advisory group. I want to ask the General Manager to make a comment on that.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, so councillors, I can give a long response to this. I'll give a short response. So any major project like this, we have a project management framework that's been adopted by the council. That's anything from something like this to building a structure, a new bridge, whatever it might be. There's a project management framework that's applied. The project management framework appoints a project control group, so the PCG. That is essentially everybody inside the organisation needs to be around the table. So that will involve, in something like this, obviously, the engineers, our commercial property managers, our legal team, our communications team, finance, so pretty much every part of the organisation. The framework also makes a provision for a project advisory committee, and that is typically where you want to bring people in from outside the actual physical delivery of the project to provide advice and oversight and contribute to the decision-making process. So while council could call a committee like this anything it likes, it would essentially be a project advisory committee for the Global Gateway Park. And those same staff that are involved in the control group would then sit around the table and the councillors could raise questions or issues. I think it's just important to note that every step of the way, so the acquisition and sale of land is one of those things that's prohibited from delegation to the council. So it can't be delegated to the staff. Every decision around the acquisition or sale of property has to be made by the councillors. So going right back to when the original property was acquired, before any development was undertaken, that was reported to council. The development control plan, the rezoning, the negotiations with Cube have all come to council for decisions. When we had the land valued, the valuation came to council. The council set the prices around what the land was to be asked for. The appointment of the agents to sell the land came to council for a determination. So council has provided oversight in every single step. Every time there's a budget adjustment or a new part of the project going around, council has to resolve to allocate the funds. So all the things that this committee will do through a project advisory committee are also, they have to be reported to the council as they have been in the past.
Just furthermore on that, you mentioned, sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, you mentioned the sale of land, so individual blocks would then come before council for final sale.
Thank you, councillor. Through you, Mr Mayor. So I think council is aware that you set policy and strategy, so you set a framework for us to operate under. So council can then determine that based on the valuation received for the land, that the mayor and the general manager can then negotiate sale based on a square metre rate. If we were to vary from that rate in any way that the council determined, it would have to come back to council for another decision.
Thank you. That answers your question.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, I can certainly see the benefit in having a committee out there, the amount of public funds that have been poured into the Global Gateway. I'd just like to move a slight amendment to say that to provide oversight of the operations, investments and maintenance of exactly what's up there. And the reason for that is to bring a committee together, as the General Manager said, to in terms of as I campaigned on transparency, so the community knows that there is an oversight of that whole operation out there. And I concur with Councillor Rodder that there needs to be a committee just to oversee that investment of ratepayers' funds.
So Councillor Rodder is a mover of the motion, and are you happy to accept?
That'd be perfect, Mr Mayor.
And as a seconder, happy to accept that?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, if something like this gets up tonight, it'll really have to come back with terms of reference for a committee, because we can't get into operational stuff, but we can certainly do and get into other committee work that maybe the General Manager has spoken about. So I'll be interested to see where we can go with that, if the councils are keen. The other thing in that terms of reference will be how many councils are on it, or is it a full council, or is it just one or two? So that'll be something that we'll have to have a conversation about. Or Councillor Rodder, as a mover, you haven't mentioned in there any numbers, so I'm assuming you're open to conversation about that.
Absolutely, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, further comments?
Mr Mayor, I'd actually like to speak against the notice of motion. Respect to Councillor Rodder's intent, but I feel like this committee is a complete duplication of what we currently have in place. As the General Manager mentioned, we have a project management framework that's been adopted and created by council that sets the guidelines of what staff can and can't do. From a policy point of view, councillors are up to date with all of the action that's happening in this space. We are kept informed on the progress, the sale, often reported back to council. I think in the last term of council, we would have had several examples where work that was being done in the Global Gateway was reported back to council. It is not the duty of councillors to be involved in the operational matters of council. That's why we employ a General Manager, and the General Manager employs a tremendous workforce to carry out that duty. We just sat through a 2-week code of conduct training that reinforced that we are the policy creators and not the drivers of operation. The notice of motion clearly says that we will be involved in the operations and the maintenance of the work of council. That is a serious breach of the duties that I feel of our role as council, and a complete lack of faith in the staff and the current process that's being done in this. So I am strongly against this notice of motion. I feel as though the work out there is already project managed. We already have frameworks in place. And if councillors would like to be more involved in that space, then I suggest they have a look at the current project management framework and adapt that to make sure we can be more efficient.
Further comments? Councillor Stinky.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think Councillor Sutherland made some very valid points there, and in addition to what was mentioned by our General Manager, and I think it's simply a duplication of what already exists. I agree with that, and I think the information that comes through reports that we read and the community have access to in terms of the open business reports allows for people to be informed. I think we certainly don't want to duplicate what's already in existence either, so I will be voting against the motion.
Thanks, Councillor Lindsay. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Rudd, didn't want to make comment. Councillors, that being the case, I'll
Wrap up, Mr Mayor.
beg your pardon.
Wrap up.
Yes, you can wrap up. You can write a reply.
Yes, right, a reply. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, Councillor MP is absolutely wrong, as is Councillor Sutherland. I don't say there for a moment that operational, I say facilitate, provide oversight of operations, investment and maintenance. There's no word, there's nothing in there that says we will guide operations, where we run the operations, I should say. And so, and the suggestion that we've already got that committee is wrong. We don't have a committee that has councillors involved in that. So this is why I've actually authored this notice of motion. So, like, I do it in good intentions. We spent a lot of money back in prior to the 2016 council, 2016-2021 council. We spent a lot of money then, and all along the way we spent millions of dollars of ratepayers' money, and I think that they deserve. We are the ones that are held accountable, so they have a right that we should have someone that represents them at the table on such a big project, and that's why I brought it before council.
Councillors, that brings the debate to a close, so I'm going to put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those against?
Division,
Where's Councillor Budd?
Against.
Against. Motion lost.
Division, Mr Mayor.
Councillors, we'll now move on to...
Mr Mayor, can we record division?
We did, we all put our hands up.
Yeah, it just hasn't been completed.
No, I was for it.
Okay.
One more.
Councillors for? Councillor Brook, Councillor Mears, Councillor Sharpen and Councillor Rodder. For? Councillor against? Councillor Sutherland? Councillor Moore? Councillor Impey? Councillor Budd? Councillors, will now move from there on to open council reports, 7.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Sutherland, seconded Councillor Lord. You wish to speak to that, Councillor Sutherland?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments, councillors? Being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. We'll move on to item 7.2, planning proposal. Could I have a mover and a seconder?
I'm just going to,
Councillor North, you're going for.
I need to excuse myself from the meeting.
Not this one, Councillor North.
No, this is secondary dwelling.
Yeah, secondary dwelling.
He recorded it as 7.3.
Sorry. I've got the ones that came out were different.
Oh, right.
We tried to catch you.
Councillors, can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Lead councillor Moore, sorry, Brooke, second to councillor Sharpen. Councillor, Brooke, do you want to speak?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anybody wish to speak against that? Any further comments on that? There being no further comments, I put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried.
Bring him back. You could just say that on the table.
Councillor North back in the room.
Fingers in his ears.
Councillors, we're talking to 7.3. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Lead councillor Brooke, seconded councillor Sutherland. Councillor Brooke, you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Anyone wish to make further comment?
Comment, Mr Mayor, or question? Just so, I went on planning portal to look at our local LEP plans. And actually I tried to find the PDFs and they seem to be obviously hidden away or a bit more difficult to find these days. But I did click on part of the portal, which I did like, and it did flash up the map and specifically showed the relevant zoning. But I'm just wondering, in terms of the speaker in public consultations concerns, we only will, obviously, this is a big job. They won't upload they won't have a digital transformation of everything until it's approved by us. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, through you, Mr Mayor. That is absolutely correct.
Yeah.
Question answered.
So, yeah, so just obviously, so moving on, all we've currently sent to Planning New South Wales will be the things that we've approved, and they'll only upload those items, and so it'll be a very piecemeal sort of upload and.
Through Mr Mayor, obviously the phase 1 changes will be done because council has approved the phase 1, with the exception to the report we've just talked about, about secondary dwellings. But we're not making any other changes until we bring to you phase 2 and go through public consultation and council signs off on that phase 2, and then it actually goes back to the Department of Planning, Housing and Infrastructure. Has to go through a whole lot of process with them and the Parliamentary Council to make sure all the clauses are correct, and then it is only then when also those clauses come back to us. So we see those clauses to make sure that the wording, the meaning of what we wanted to say in those clauses is actually what they say. So we would never agree, or we would never say to the department that this is ready to be uploaded until the council is comfortable with both the mapping and the clauses and how they're worded.
One final question, Mr Mayor, sorry. So as I said, I actually quite like the portal in terms of actually clicking on a lot DP or an address or something like that, and it came up quickly with the zoning. We'll still also have that availability of the bigger map that will show a wider area and the colours for all of the zonings. Say if it was looking at East Tamworth or South Tamworth or whatever, would it show that potentially what the PDFs do at the moment? Will it show that as well? Will it have that?
Mr Mayor, as far as I'm aware, it'll be no different in what you will see, but certainly if my staff want to tell me anything different.
So why is there an expedited amendment?
Order, Mr Mayor.
Yeah, that will still be available. This is really just converting the PDF documents to digital. There's no change to the existing land use controls for Tamworth. That has to go through the process that our director just spoke about.
Then why expedite?
No. You can't intervene in the council meeting. You did have your say, Councillor Moore.
So through you, Mr Mayor, I just wanted to comment. I think I undertook the same trials as Councillor Rodder undertook with regard to trying out the mapping, and I found it quite good. But I know we don't have the digital stuff there, but it gave me the land use allowance zoning, which was good. But I could see where it's going. It's simply for digital enhancement, so we can get digital information from it. No changes, so I appreciate that. The main thing is that we know there's not going to be any changes, and we've already asked that, we've already had clarification, and it's just being done for formalities so we can get it through quickly enough and done soon enough. Is that correct?
Pretty much.
Thank you.
Probably the way of the future, Councillor North.
So no changes.
Comments? Further comments, councillors?
Just a quick one. After talking to the guys at the Livable Communities, the moving to this digital platform is going to save an awful lot of time and certainly a lot of headaches, so I think it's a great move forward.
Further comments, councillors? There are no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Unanimously. We'll move to item 7.3.
Oh, yeah, don't want to ask about.
Oh, it is too.
Ask about.
We're on 7.4. Sorry, councillors. Have to adjust that number. Could I have a move in a second? Four, please. Yeah. Sutherland, seconded. Councillor Sutherland, you wish to speak to that?
Mr Mayor, just to say that I love the names of these streets, they sound very fortuitous.
Anyone wish to speak against?
No, just a question or an observation, Mr Mayor. I was quite surprised that the developer had missed a massive opportunity. Well, I can't see why he didn't name one of the streets Winners Way instead of Winners Close. I thought it would have been a great marketing opportunity, so I was surprised there, but anyway, that's what they wanted to do, so I'm supportive of that.
Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put it 7.4. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against, carried. Councillors will move from there straight to item 9.1. Conduct panel of conduct reviewers. Could I have a move in a second, please? Move Councillor Impey, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Impey?
No.
Anybody wish to speak against that? I'll put there. Any further comments? Put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Just clarification quickly, sorry, Mr Mayor, that so this panel of reviewers is here to review code of conduct infringements by councillors. So it's another layer of interpretation or transparency for the council. Thank you.
So again, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Motion, I had a look at me.
Councillors, we'll move to item 9.2, integrated planning and reporting, state of the region report. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved Councillor Sharp, seconded Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Sharp, you wish to speak to that?
No.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Further comments on that report? Councillor Sutherland.
Just a question, Mr Mayor, and that is that this State of the Region report, is that the same as the end of term report that's done previously?
Yes.
Yeah.
Council, there's some very good statistics in that report to keep and have by your side if you're trying to answer questions from the community. Very handy to have. Very handy to have this up by your side. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Impey.
Yeah, just a quick one, Mr Mayor. It mentioned 7 bridges. I think that number may have even reduced since then. I think there was an item in one of our first council meetings to replace another bridge in one of the outlying areas of the Tamworth area.
Some timber bridges.
Yeah.
It could have been. I'd have to refer to Mr Russell.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we've actually got a number of bridge contracts going at the moment as we speak. So yeah, there'll be very many timber bridges left by the end of this year.
So the next report will probably have very few, if any.
Yep, and just sorry for you, Mr Mayor, I've mentioned many times in my life, I think the council's done a fantastic job of replacing a huge number of timber bridges that we inherited when amalgamation went through, and I think council should be applauded for that.
Further comments, councillors?
I asked a question before. Can I
ask a question? Here you go.
Can I know? So just a comment, and that was in regards to the reporting as the end of term. It's great to see the progress and especially the achievements. I wouldn't mind seeing in the future our shortcomings. You know, like whereabouts and have we dropped the ball across a number of projects, just so we can see that as an end of term report. Now, it's always great to pat ourselves on the back and look at the number of successes, which there have been so many. But it'd be great to be able to look at the end of term of council and say, look, we could have done better in these things, and to make sure that moving forward we can make sure they're adequately addressed in the future.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland.
Comment, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Mears.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank our staff, obviously with the bridge program, etc., etc. We have the easy job of saying yes or no. It's the staff that do tireless work in the background to get these things up and running, funding and moving forward. So, as I said, although we're the face of council and we get the pats on the back or the kick in the backside when we get it wrong, I'd like to thank the staff for their diligence. So, yeah, congratulations to them.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, I'll put the recommendation of all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried.
We didn't record them, did we?
We'll move to item 1.3. Got a move and a seconder. Move Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Brooke. Councillor Mears, you wish to speak to that?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that report, recommendation? Any further comments on that recommendation? Being none, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. We go from there to 9.4 for the improvement fund. Another great report. Could I have a move and a seconder, please? Councillor North, seconded Councillor Brooke. Councillor North, you wish to speak to that?
Actually, I will just quickly speak to it, Mr Mayor. I was actually out at Barraba yesterday and speaking to some of the locals there for the memorial service we had, and a turnout of 300 to 400 people there, which is just amazing. I was blown away by it. But I mentioned to a few of them that the money that's going to the showground pavilion there for the fixing up the roof, and they were very appreciative and quite excited to see something being done.
Thank you. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, the Woolbrook Hall and Park Committee, that $3,000 is like a parting gift. So, thank you. And
Councillor Rodder, I can answer that. Woolbrook Hall and Park Committee are still a part of this council. Nothing's been approved in terms of boundary changes. Until that happens, it's still part of our local government area, and we have to look after that the same as
absolutely.
That's what I mean, that one too.
We just send the bill to Walker.
Further comments, councillor?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a slightly different slant on the Woolbrook Hall. Nice to see the old steel chairs replaced with modern chairs. They might be a heck of a lot easier to carry in the future, particularly those volunteers who might be a little bit more senior in their years. But interesting that there were only 4 applications received for the fund. So perhaps it might be a fund that might need to be maybe, I don't know, more need to be aware of the fund potentially.
Hopefully most areas would be, Councillor Ricky, but yeah, there's still 30,000 or a bit over 30,000 unallocated. So further comments, councillors? We no further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 9.5, council elections of special purpose committees. We have most of those positions, well, pretty much all of those positions filled. There is a position of the General Manager Performance Review Panel, one person voted for that committee. I know there's a couple of people who put their hand up. There's Councillor North, I think Councillor Mears, you put your hand up. Any other councillors?
I had, Mr Mayor.
And Councillor Ryder. So do we, we've got 3 people putting their hand up for one position.
Mr Mayor, I might just add that I might just pull myself back from it and allow the 2 experienced councillors to nominate for that.
Councillors, it's come down to a vote.
But before, Mr Mayor, look, I'd probably be keen to move an amendment to that to include all councillors. And you know, we heard recently at some training that the councillors undertook as late as last Friday. We were reminded that during that training that we have just one staff member as councillors, that's the General Manager. And I believe on that basis, all councillors should be on the committee. to discuss directly matters of concern with that single staff member that we have. And furthermore, I'll be honest with you, I'm pretty confident that, historically speaking, many concerns that I've raised in the past with former panel members about issues such as the need for a rate increase, Walsh House road maintenance, the pace of DA approvals, Williamsburg, all fell on deaf ears. And I feel as a result that it's important that as we are responsible to the electors, we need to be the conduit to the chief of the operational organisation. And that's why I believe that we should all be serving on that committee. It doesn't mean that it's going to turn into a brawl or rabble. Yeah, I'm sure that we'll be able to get through that process quite easily, but I really do believe that all councillors should be on that committee. And I did have another enhancement too that we could speak about after that, if you like.
Okay. Councillor Rodder, I'll just make a point of saying that the first training we did, and maybe one of the other councillors there wants to make comment, the first 2 days of training we did, it was made very clear to us that the panel of 4 was workable, the whole council was not. And the lady that spoke to us, Kath, said that councils have tried it and it didn't work very well. So I think we took, the councillors on the day that were at that particular session, I thought took notice that maybe that we should stick with that course. So that's why I'm sort of supportive of the 4, because she's a professional in that industry and she said it will not work, and she said that was her advice on this. And did I have a councillor Budd?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just some comments in relation to that. Certainly to reiterate your words, during that training it was quite clearly illustrated to us that 9 councillors, or the full complement of councillors, making decisions on the General Manager's future was extremely difficult, unproductive and quite divisive amongst the councillors. And further to that, just in terms of transparency, I think it's very hard for Councillor Rodder to actually nominate, considering he's already made public statements about his intentions with the GM. I think he should pull himself back from that position.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Sutherland?
Yeah, Mr. I wouldn't be... sorry. Before I'd make a comment, I'd just ask a question, and that was in regards to the GM Performance Review Committee. Who was on the panel prior to this one we're voting for now? Are you able to give that information?
I can do that, and I can give it on the 2 before that if you like.
Oh, just the last one would be fine.
The last one was Councillor Judy Cates, Councillor Phil Betts and Councillor Brooks Southwell and myself.
Right, yeah. Because I think having the Councillor 4s worked well in the past. I wouldn't be in support of having 9 councillors. I think that for any employee to turn up to an annual performance review and to be met with 9 senior staff members would be completely intimidating, would be completely unheard of, and would be borderline unethical for any other job outside of council. I also agree that council, we have the ability to set the guidelines of the General Manager when we review contracts. When we set contracts, when we set guidelines, we set what that looks like moving forward. The annual review, performance review that we're talking about now as a committee, I think is completely sufficient to have 4 elected councillors as trusted elected representatives of the region. So I wouldn't support the expansion of 9 councillors to the performance review. I'm quite happy with the 4 at the moment.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Impey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I must admit, before that training session that you alluded to, I was one of the councillors who was really keen to be part of that review committee. And when I actually had a private conversation with that professional, as well as listening into the public conversation we had with all the people present, or the open conversation. And I thought long and hard. I think in this case, the General Manager is responded to us as 9 councillors probably every day of the year anyway. And And I think the system that we have in place and the processes we've had in place over the years, where 4 councillors, including the mayor and the deputy mayor, are on the committee, has worked. But generally speaking, if any one of us as 9 councillors has an issue or view, we knock on the general manager's door, we sit down as adults, we talk about it, and if it needs to go further than that, there's a process in place to do that too. So, I think sometimes it's just a case of, if the system's not broke, why try and fix it?
Thank you, Councillor. Anything? Further comments? Councillor Mears?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. I'm completely opposite Councillor Impey, and I'm not saying one way or the other, but there are lots of things that come before council that are predetermined, they're historic. Does it mean we don't change or we can't change? I think that a panel of 9 could work quite well, and a panel of 4 has worked quite well. So I don't think there's any intent either way. But yeah, just, if we're going to go back on what's happened in the past over the decades or years, then we're never going to move forward as a council either. You know, we look at future things in our community, planning, Project 100. Well, you don't move forward unless you make change or you consider change. So I'm open to either way. I don't think it's spurious, but as Councillor Rodder said, and I think it was Kate told us, we only have 1 employee, and I think we're all grown-ups as well, so if we couldn't work together on that, we probably can't work together on other things, but I'm happy to leave that to the vote. So.
Councillors, there is some division within the group about the numbers. The only way really to test that is to take it to a vote.
Mr Mayor, just a question. I think, actually, I don't know if I have a seconder for my motion.
Amendment?
My amendment, yes. Just saying that.
I'm just about to ask you for one. Do you want to move an amendment to that particular?
Yes, Mr.
Because you haven't actually moved an amendment yet.
Yes, sorry, Mr Mayor, I will move an amendment.
So you've moved that. Seconded that. The councillors, we have debated the topic pretty well. Do we want to have any more debate on this? Councillors, then I'll ask those councillors in favour of supporting the amendment for 9 councillors to be on the review committee, please stand up. 4. Councillors, for those that wish to stay the same as 4, please raise your hand. And what's Councillor vote? 5-4. So councillors, it remains at 4. So now that the decision has...
No, that's all right.
Sorry.
Yeah, Jeff was voting against the motion.
Amendment.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry, Councillor
Councillors, we now have a motion that we continue on with this and it'll be 4. I don't think we'll have to take that to a vote. We now are 4, but we do have to talk about who's going to be on that committee. So, councillors, we have myself and the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Sutherland, who's on that. We have one other position and we have a couple of names for that.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Mears.
You second that? Did you second that? Second that.
I'm happy to withdraw if there's 2 of us.
It was 3 of you a minute ago.
Wasn't.
I withdrew as well, Mr Mayor.
Pardon?
I'd withdrawn as well.
So okay. So Councillor Rodder, you're the only person that's got their hand up. Is any other councillor interested in putting their hand up? No? So councillors, Councillor Rodder will be on that general manager's performance. Okay, what else do we want to change there?
So, thank you, Mr Mayor. Just, we spoke about this briefly when we were talking about all the committees, subject to amendments to potentially the terms of reference for each committee, the community members be required to reapply via an EOI process for each committee. If we were changing all of the committees for new councillors, I sort of felt we need to do the same for the community members, with the exception of those that may have been appointed within a very short period of time prior to the recent local government elections, I think 3 or 6 months or something like that.
Councillors, how do you feel about that? I think there's, in particular, the Community Safety Committee, there needs to be probably expressions called. Okay, there is a report coming to council on how that's going to happen and make up those committees, so
Okay.
That's in hand, councillor Roberts.
Mr Mayor.
Further comments, councillors, on that? There being no further comments, I'll put that recommendation as a whole. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Carried. Councillors, we'll move to 9.6. National Roads, moving the second. Move councillor North, seconded councillor Thornley. You wish to speak there, councillor North?
No.
Anyone wish to speak against what the recommendation saying?
We on 9.6, was it? Sorry.
Pardon?
Which one?
National Roads.
Oh, National Roads.
Yeah.
Margaret River.
Councillors, anyone wish to speak against that recommendation? Further comments on that recommendation? I need some nominations for, well, we normally send one in the mayor.
Mr Mayor, I was looking to nominate. I've really taken a great interest in roads and infrastructure, particularly water infrastructure, which there's some keynote speakers at that conference. So I'd actually like to attend that.
Councillor, you'll put your hand forward. Any other councillors wishing to? Councillor, I too would be liking to, if it's at all possible for me to attend that. If memory reasons don't impede on that, I'd like to as well. So councillors, can we include in that recommendation the mover and the seconder that Councillor Rodder?
So, a quick question, and I'm sure that this might be just the total. Councillors have been allocated the sum of 45,500 annually. That's not accurate, is it?
No,
That's total.
That's total.
It's not allocated.
It's a pool of money.
Yeah. Thank you.
So it is accurate. So councillors, would the mover and the seconder accept that Councillor North and the Mayor attend that conference? So, councillors, I'll put that recommendation as it's printed with the Mayor and Councillor North attending that conference. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against, carried. Councillors, that brings us to the end of open council, and we'll be moving into closed council shortly. But before I call for a motion to move into closed council, I'll ask the general manager, has anyone asked any matters, bring matters in closed council, taken into open council?
No, Mr Mayor.
Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to see an item in closed council brought into open council? There is not, so councillors, I'll ask for a motion to move into closed council. Could I have a motion? Councillor Mears, seconded Councillor Brook. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Somebody out there, please? Thank you, Mr Mayor. Council, this is the report from the closed session of the ordinary council meeting held on the 12th of November 2024. In closed council this evening, you considered one item of business, and for that item of business, you adopted the recommendation as per your business papers.
Thank you, councillors. I'll have a motion to accept that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.